Welcome, fellow horror hounds, and welcome to the latest episode of Talk and Stalk, your unholy home for horror. I'm your host, as always, Barry, and I have a special guest and co-host today, a friend and fellow film buff, the diabolical Darren.
Hiya, mate. How's it going? It's good to be here.
Glad to have you on board. I thought Darren would be great for this podcast. The movie that we're actually going to focus on today is Dario Argento's directorial debut, released in 1970, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. Now, I think this is probably the first giallo I ever actually saw. I was probably about maybe 16, 17 years old when I first watched this movie. This is the movie that really kind of got me into giallo. How about yourself, Darren?
Well, I remember watching one of the first Argento films I saw was Tenebrae. And that must have been going back to the middle 2000s.
Yeah.
I then progressed quickly on to Suspiria. And then I think this may have been the third Dario Argento film I ever saw.
Oh, okay. Tenebrae is a good one to start with, though.
I was quite blessed with that. I think that's ideal. You know, I think this one could be one to start with as well, looking in hindsight. But I think I was quite blessed.
Yeah, because Tenebrae was really, because that was released in 82, wasn't it? And that was kind of like the golden age of giallo had kind of, giallo had kind of died down at that point.
Yeah, it was getting more into like slasher.
Yeah.
The giallo genre was turning more into straight up slasher. You had New York Ripper.
Yeah.
You had Maniac, obviously not a giallo, but from 1980. And it was going more along the gore lines.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I think that's a good place to start for me.
Yeah, the bird with the crystal plumage. It's not the first giallo. It's not the first film of its kind, but it's a film that certainly played a very important part in the evolution of giallo. It certainly did a great job of popularizing giallo. And firmly cementing Dario Argento on the horror map. And it's very much this film that actually basically had him described as kind of the Italian Hitchcock.
Well, with this film, there was obviously, as you know, Blood and Black Lace from 1964, Mario Bava.
Classic, yeah.
And then you went, I think, 5-6 years when you had sort of inheritance type gialli.
Yeah.
Like memory loss gialli. Going up until, say, 1969. And then Dario took from Blood and Black Lace and sort of put it into a more updated version, if you like, for the time. And I think this film you could watch today, even though it's dated, it's not half as dated as a lot of films of the time.
No.
It's quite stylish and quite modern looking, even now.
It is. It's a film that holds up remarkably well, actually, I think. It's very deftly directed by Argento, and it's quite the debut. It's a film that's very stylistically made. I think with this movie, it's certainly not as overtly sexual or as brutal as Argento's later films. As I say, it's very well made, and yeah, there are definitely Hitchcock echoes there. Now, this also is quite notable. It's the first instalment, isn't it, of what Argento's called his Animal Trilogy, which are 3 films with literally no connection aside from actually having animals in their title.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, the second one being The Cat o' Nine Tails, which was released the following year, and then, of course, Four Flies on Grey Velvet. To me, this is hands down the best of them 3 films.
Well, it's funny you should say that. The first time I seen The Bird with Crystal Plumage, I wouldn't say I was lukewarm. Okay. I liked it a lot. But in sort of the last year or so, I've watched it, it must be about 3-4 times. Yeah. And it's just shot up in my estimation. Yeah. To where now, it doesn't quite make my top 5 Argento, but it's not far behind,
Yeah. I mean, it's actually an uncredited adaptation as well, isn't it? Of a novel called The Screaming Mimi that was actually made into a film itself, released in 1958.
That's right, with Anita Ekberg, I think it was.
That's right, yeah.
And in that film, which was quite funny, there's a girl that gets stalked in a shower, and it was a year or two before Psycho.
Okay.
So it had that going for it, but apparently it was not well received from what I've read.
Yeah. I mean, you know, with this film and that as well, something that would become very commonplace, something that would become very prevalent in Argento's films is that the film actually features an artist as the main character, a writer. And they've had writers, musicians, dancers, singers, painters. It's a very recurring theme with Argento's films.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, this kind of set the template for many of his films to follow. For example, having a character that recalls clues from memory.
He done it with I think after this he done it with Four Flies, where you get that scene at the start where everything is quite not what it seems.
Yeah, a character has to
does it very well.
Yeah, also in Tenebrae, getting back to the film that you mentioned, a character that feels like they've seen something, but they can't quite put their finger on it. Deep Red, of course, considered by many to be one of Argento's best, if not their best. It's a very recurring theme with Argento's films. You've
kind of got to be on the ball watching it. But then again, you know, if you do see something like the scene with Deep Red, if you see that woman, you know, I don't want to go in. Anyone listening to this will know spoilers anyway. But there's a scene early on in that film where you've got the killer in the mirror.
Yeah.
And he doesn't see her.
Yeah.
That, just the old premise of that, and Four Flies, and this film, is superb. And this is his forte. This is what he does really well.
Yeah.
Because there's no cheats in this film, mind, if you go back.
No.
The whole, you know, it's all logical.
Yeah.
Which going on to like further Jali after this, and you had An Imitation, then you had these films.
Yeah.
A whole slew of them. And there was a lot of cheats in them, and I love that anyway. Don't get me wrong, I do love that. But he played it straight with this, which is got to be admirable.
Yeah. It's a very solid thriller, and what I love about Giallo, and films in general, actually, I'm a big mystery fan. You know, I love slasher films, but I love good mysteries. I love good whodunits. Films that keep you guessing right up until the final reel, you know, as to who the killer is. And, you know, with this film, obviously, the lead character, his name is actually escaping me, but he's actually witness to what he believes to be an attempted murder. He's obviously trapped between the glass and the wall, is it? In the gallery?
His name's Sam, I think, in the film.
Yeah, that's it. And, he witnesses this attempted murder. The killer flees. We're gonna go into spoilers. We're gonna preface it and actually tell you when the spoilers are coming and that. And then, of course, he thinks that there's some vital piece of information that he's missing that he hasn't actually picked up on. And like a lot of Giallo as well, again with Argento and that, Argento himself was the hands of the killer, wasn't he, with the black gloves?
He done that in all his films. It was sort of a little nod to Hitchcock.
Yeah.
You know, Hitchcock, as we all know, used to have the cameo. But for Dario, I think it was more for practical reasons rather than anything else.
Yeah, I think
he was a small guy, so he had, you know,
he was standing in for the killer, wasn't he? For this,
I think
this film.
You know, in all his films.
Yeah, because obviously you get that black, you get the shots of the black coat and the black gloves. I love, like, you know, an early scene on in the film where the killer has actually got this collection of knives against this red cloth. Yeah, it's just like a really kind of striking image. And there's a particular shot that I really love, is where, and again, it's kind of like, it's where John Carpenter obviously took cues, you know, took tribute, if you will, from these films, where the killer has actually stood there at the corner of the shot, just watching the girl go into the house, and very reminiscent Michael Myers' Halloween.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I think there's a bit later on in the film as well, there's like an eyeball shot through a door, which is Black Christmas all over.
Yeah.
But he does, the first scene in this film where, like you say, he's stalking this girl. We don't actually see her kill, I don't think, but you can see him stalking this girl.
Yeah.
It's just brilliant. You've got the lullaby, you know, Ennio Morricone.
Fantastic score. Yeah.
The lullaby theme is fantastic, yeah. Which, like, even though Dario went on to fall out with Morricone, I think 2 or 3 films later, and in a way that wasn't a bad thing, because then we got Goblin. But then what would Deep Red have been like with Morricone? So we don't
No.
I don't think you could beat Goblin for that film, but
No, Goblin, that is a great score. I love their work on Suspiria and Tenebrae as well.
oh yeah. I even love Sleepless.
Yeah.
The score to Sleepless is
We've
fantastic.
talked about that before. Sleepless is a pretty underrated giallo, I think.
That's one I would like to cover at some stage.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure we can make that happen. I mean, Ennio Morricone, may he rest in peace, because he actually passed away last year, didn't he?
I think it's well into his 90s, wasn't he?
Yeah, fantastic career. The music works, just how each shot is just perfectly framed. It's just really well made. It's just directed with a lot of finesse with this movie. And, getting back to later giallos and all that, this isn't one that's overly brutal. It's like you said, some of the kills are kind of off screen. I think, the kind of worst death we get, the most brutal, which is very sadistic, really, in its nature, is the girl that's killed in her own home, and the killer is slicing with the razor constantly.
Oh, yeah. Was that in the lift? Or...
Actually, yes, it may have been the lift, yes.
And that, again, to me, I thought was dressed to kill straight away.
Yeah, which, of course, is an American-made giallo, isn't it? That film is effectively a giallo.
So even though Brian De Palma claims he's never seen a giallo in his life, which I find that hard to believe, to be honest, he must have seen that.
Yeah,
he must have.
Yeah. So I mean, this film as well, as is quite often the case in giallos as well. You often get some oddball characters. Now, I often watch these films, usually English dubbing. Sometimes I'll watch them. Italian with the subtitles and so forth. And there's one character in particular that it's the guy that's the pimp in
So
this
Long?
film. That's it, yeah.
Yeah, he went on, he'd done a couple of films for Argento. I think he was in Four Flies, and he'd done his TV show, The Tram.
Oh, okay.
So he was like... And he does it well, Argento. He likes to put humour in his films. And it does not detract from the fact that it's a thriller.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a bit of comedy relief sort of thing.
It's notable there's a character quite late on in the film, because the film actually at its core, it revolves around a painting. Later in the film, we come to realise that this painting has some kind of meaning. One of the victims actually works in an antique shop, didn't she? And I think she actually... didn't she sell a painting to what we believe to be the killer? Yeah.
And I think that painting is a massive plot point in it.
Yeah.
It's something that comes back later on.
Yeah. And we actually meet the painter, don't we, near the end of the film. And he's this kind of grizzled character and that. And let's just say that cats. He keeps a lot of cats.
Yeah. Which Dario does feature a lot of cats in his films.
Yeah.
He always said he was intrigued because they scared him. Yeah. He obviously loves them, but they scare him and all that. And he went on to make The Black Cat, I think, one season, didn't he?
Oh, he did. Yes, he did. So there's a scene near the end that kind of makes me cringe. But this film as well, because, it is very Hitchcockian in its kind of delivery. There's twists there. But this film certainly doesn't throw too many suspects into the mix either. There's a lot of giallos that came later that throw, suspect after suspect. If you've seen Sergio Martino's Torso, which I know you have,
absolutely.
Practically every male in that film is a goddamn suspect.
He loves his red herrings, Martino.
Yeah, he does.
And Dario does it to some degree, but nowhere near as much as them. And that was a trope that just happened to, all giallo in the 70s, include something like Eyeball. Yes. And I think everyone in that film is a red herring.
Yes. Yeah.
So, it's something that became a trope of the giallo film.
It is. And, often it becomes to the point of being nonsensical, completely implausible. But you know what? That's part of these films' charm. That's what giallo fans kind of expect. It's staying true to the formula, staying true to the format. Bird with the Crystal Plumage. It is quite a reveal, actually, at the end. I actually just want to quickly talk about the lead character, played by an actor called Tony Mazzanti, an American-Italian. I found him very likeable. I actually like this guy in this role.
He was a very successful actor at the time, or he'd come off a film that I think Dario wrote, and I don't know if you know the history, but they did not get on very well at all, Dario and Mazzanti.
Well, actually, that brings me to the next point. I did read something just a little while ago that apparently he was a very intense actor, and apparently he'd show up at Argento's apartment at all hours of the morning / night to discuss characterization, and Argento got annoyed with it.
Yeah, I think it was 3 a.m. on a Saturday night, and Argento just flipped. Reading an interview afterwards, many years afterwards, Tony Mazzanti said that there was never a problem between the two.
Okay.
So it's funny how you got two different aspects to what went on. But Dario said he was very, very hard to get on with.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I mean,
kind of too big for his boots.
Yeah, he clearly, from the sounds of things, took acting very, very seriously and wanted to give the best he could. But at the same time, you've got to kind of respect one's privacy, haven't you?
Argento said he was very self-centered, very egotistical. So, and
yeah, because I know that Argento's actually kind of a self-confessed misogynist, isn't he? In a way.
I don't know about self-confessed, but yeah, you can see it through his films.
Yeah.
For sure. What Argento's always said is he loves, like we all do, he loves a pretty lady, and that mixed with death and blood.
Yeah.
He said is something, and if you notice with his kill scenes, you could paint a picture to them. You could pause them, and they're like paintings.
Yeah, they are.
And he does that, and I think that is possibly his forte. That is the one thing that's common in his films, and secondary to acting, because he said he's not overly, bothered about acting ability. He said as long as he gets those death scenes right, and it does come through in his films.
Well, his films are certainly, especially going to the later films as well, very notable for their murder set pieces. And he's a very kind of experimental director. In many of his films, you'd notice him adopting kind of new techniques and so forth. Much like Hitchcock did back in the day. Hitchcock, one of the most influential, some would say the most influential film director of all time. And Argento just adopted so many clever techniques with his films.
I think the difference with Hitchcock was, and I think it's been picked up on, is Hitchcock was more suspense.
Yes.
Dario was more about the stylized death scenes, like I just mentioned.
Yeah.
But it is a good comparison because, and then you got De Palma, or I would lump in with the three of them as well. Yeah,
De Palma's obviously very much an ardent Hitchcock fan. It's obviously very noticeable, isn't it, in many of his films, especially in movies like Dressed to Kill and even Sisters with Margot Kidder.
That's one I've recently seen for the first time, and I loved it.
Yeah, I was quite late to that film, actually. I only watched that last year for the first time. But yeah, quickly as well, with Bird with Crystal Plumage as well. I didn't know this, but the bird species, because it all comes around to a bird near the end of the film. You think to yourself, you get like 80 minutes into the film, you're thinking, why is this called Bird with a Crystal Plumage? This is a weird title. And then it becomes apparent near the end. But apparently the Hornatus navalis, which is actually the name of the bird, isn't actually a real bird. The bird we actually see in the film is actually a grey-crowned crane, but that sounds nowhere near as exotic.
But it's another thing that he does well. Argento is so clever, to link that to an animal, to where it is in the film, and then they have, the wiseness to realise what's going on. It's in the background, and the killer actually lives by a zoo. Yeah. It's so clever. Yeah. So clever. It's something that probably wasn't done up until that time.
No, it was certainly, it certainly is quite unique. I mean, the thing is, I love the titles for a lot of these giallos. I mean, where do you start? You got like, what is it? Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Have the Key.
That's one of my favourites.
What a title. There's so many. We could be here all day. The Night Evelyn Came from the Grave, which is more of kind of a gothic giallo, but I mean,
Yeah.
this film was a success, wasn't it? I mean, this film, from what I know, actually played in a Milan cinema for 3.5 years because it was so popular. And I believe its budget was actually about 500,000, and it
Half
actually
a
made
million,
a
yeah.
million at the
Yeah.
box office.
Well, it came out and it was received in Italy. At first, it was quite lukewarmly received. But like Halloween, through word of mouth, it took off.
Yeah.
It ended up number 13 in the Italian box office of 1970 to 1971. And funnily enough, there was a Giallo, Investigation of a Citizen Above Suspicion, by Elio Petri, that actually finished above it.
Okay.
But it was credited as being a success. And on the back of that, then it went to America, and then it just took off.
Yeah. And obviously, became one of the most, certainly I think one of the most, it did a great job, of essentially popular. Like you said, we had Blood and Black Lace released in '64, which is actually my all-time favourite Giallo. I absolutely love Blood and Black Lace.
That could be a good starting point into the Giallo for some people.
Yeah, a very influential film. I think everyone from the likes of what I've read, Quentin Tarantino, Martin Scorsese, actually cited that film as an inspiration, one of the films that helped them, get into cinema. So we're going to quickly go into a spoiler bit here, actually. So there are going to be spoilers coming. I'd imagine probably a lot of people listening to this probably have seen the film. But Eva Renzi, in the big plot twist at the end, turns out to be the killer. It wasn't actually an attempted murder. It was actually a husband that was actually trying to take the knife away from her. So there's this big twist. Now, from what I've read, Eva Renzi actually considered her role in this film as career suicide. She actually hated...
I actually got that written down, yeah. Yeah, and I don't know why, because I think she's superb in the film. Yeah. And I think she had the ability that she could have gone on and been another Edwige Finesse or Barbara Boucher.
Yeah.
But she says it was career suicide. I think she didn't want to make thrillers after this.
Yeah.
And I think that's what held her back a bit.
I think the problem she had wasn't like the film in general. It was the kind of crazed reveal at the end where she's kind of like, I mean, she proper goes psychotic near the end of the film with the maniacal laughing and all this and that. It's very kind of... this isn't a nitpick or anything like that. It's very kind of like, forced and out there. And I think that she absolutely hated doing that.
To me, I think that's superb. I think she comes across as what she's playing, psychotic. She's one of the real pluses of the film for me.
Yeah.
Even though she has not got loads of screen time, but...
No, I mean, there's that kind of like exposition bit, which again is very reminiscent of Psycho. Not to draw too many parallels to Hitchcock, but obviously the big twist. Spoiler alert. I'm assuming everyone listening has seen Psycho. If not, shame on you. With Psycho, obviously the big twist, Norman Bates being the mother, and then we get the whole kind of like why he's doing it, etc. And that become very much a staple with Giallo, doesn't it? There's that quick kind of final scene of the film where there's kind of an exposition thing.
Yeah. He, like I say, he's done it in Four Flies. He's done it. I'm trying to think if he's done it later on in his career, but it happens a lot in these Giallos.
So you get it kind of one scene, isn't it? And they're basically telling us in that one scene as to why she's the killer. And it was the painting, wasn't it? I believe she was actually the girl that was almost killed, almost murdered. It obviously psychologically scarred her. And when she saw the painting, which was actually a painting based on her ordeal, it triggered her.
Yeah, and again, I think that's very logical in the way he's gone about it. Because that could have happened, He does not cheat in this film, and I love him for it.
Yeah.
Did you notice in that first scene as well, which obviously we get the conclusion at the end, that he deliberately puts the husband in black,
yes,
and the female in white?
Oh, yes.
Totally throw you off.
Yeah.
And it works. It totally throws you.
Yeah, it's clever. I mean, I actually watched this with my fiance. She'd never seen it before. We actually watched it together last year, and she's usually very good at working out plot twists. She's like Miss Marple and Columbo kind of rolled into one. And she didn't actually guess it, not up until the last 10 minutes of the movie. But the fact of the matter is, there's not many suspects left anyway. So if it gets to the point in the movie where there's no one really to suspect. But so, yeah, she didn't really work it out until, close near the end of the film and that.
I think they try to... There's a couple of characters that they sort of try to maybe... It could be them.
Yeah, there's one guy who... his character name is escaping me. He's the one that takes the tape.
Right.
And he's the one that actually ends up with a knife in his back near the end.
Is that the guy who follows him and almost kills him with a meat cleaver?
No, that's the guy with the yellow, isn't it? Wearing the yellow.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Oh, and that brings me on to that point, actually. That whole scene was like... I actually felt like I was watching a different movie.
Yeah, apparently some people say that it was shot maybe a half after the film to add filler to it. See, to me, I love that scene.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the standout scenes. Obviously, you can't beat the way he stalks women, Dario film stalking women and all that. But to me, that stands out. And a little tidbit is that guy was actually in The Man Who Knew Too Much. I think he dies in Alfred Hitchcock's
classic
film.
Hitchcock, yeah.
And of course, he was Barlow in Salem's Lot, and you can tell by his face features.
Yeah. I didn't know that about Barlow, but yeah, Man Who Knew Too Much. That's obviously the 1956 version, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I think Hitchcock may have actually been the first director to ever actually remake his own film, because the original was a 30s film, and then 56 with James Stewart. But yeah, I remember watching that scene, because obviously the scene goes on for a little while and that. But I was watching it, I was like, what's going on here? This is like, I felt like I was watching kind of an action movie for a few minutes and that.
Yeah, I get that. I don't know, I just seem to love that scene. Because you've got the old suspense where he's chasing them round.
Yeah.
Is it like a car park full of buses, or?
Yeah, that's it.
It's and then you've got a little bit of comedy relief then, where he walks in and it's full of prize fighters all in the same jacket.
Yeah, that's it.
I think that's Dario, like, basically having a bit of a laugh at you.
Yeah. But yeah, he was a guy, that guy ends up with a knife in the back because, for a little while, he doesn't have much in the way of screen time, but towards the end of the movie, before you see the knife in his back, you think, oh God, he's the killer. It's really well made, solid thriller, and I think it's quite a debut. I think when it comes to horror movie directors out there making their debuts, I think Bird with the Crystal Plumage is one of the better examples.
I think it's up there, innit? I think it wasn't Mario Bava's first film, but his first giallo, to me, I think was before Blood and Black Lace. I think it was The Girl Who Knew Too Much.
63, wasn't it?
I think that's a good,
Yeah.
But then it's not his first film, so...
No. I mean, that's obviously cited as being, like, the first true giallo. That is, that film, very Hitchcockian again in its tone. I mean, even the title, The Girl Who Knew Too Much, is an allude to The Man Who Knew Too Much.
With all in, you got the black and white as well. It's very Hitchcockian.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good opening starter for a giallo film.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, but this film, like you say, I don't think he could have made a better film to open up his account with.
No.
It's hard to find faults with this film.
No,
it really is.
It's stylistically, it's very efficient. It's it's definitely directed, and it would certainly make my top 5 Argento films. We'll talk about the other Argento films in future podcasts. But yeah, Bird with the Crystal Plumage is in my top 5, and he certainly made a name for himself with this movie. So yeah. I mean, I also...
For me, I'd say it's the top 10.
Okay.
It doesn't quite make my top 5.
Okay.
But we'll get into that, hopefully, in another episode.
Yeah. But yeah, there's just so many giallos out there. Like we said before, the 70s was just the golden age of them. Sergio Martino was churning them out, and, Dario Argento. And there's many others. There's many other giallos that are kind of obscure, ones that kind of flew under the radar. There's one of which I'll just briefly mention, and that is The House with Laughing Windows.
That has got to be one of my top 5 of all time, giallo.
It's and again it gets back to the weird titles, just the titles.
Oh, that film has got a batshit crazy ending. It's fantastic. It's
Yeah.
Honestly, it's so underrated.
Yeah, I agree.
So underrated.
And
it's
I
up there
believe
with Martino films.
well, the director, Pupi Avati, that was the only film he ever directed solo, wasn't it? I think that was the only ever movie that the only giallo he directed.
I think he may have done one in the 90s. I'd have to look that up. But I think he's done one in the 90s. But it wasn't, obviously, one of the 70s or 80s giallo.
Okay.
But he sort of went with the genre again in bits and pieces. But that was his main, that's probably top of his directorial list, to be honest. Fantastic film.
Yeah, it's one that I only discovered a few years ago and watched it. I'm hoping for a Blu-ray release at some point.
I think we all are. We all are with that one.
But
I want to bring up what you thought of Susie Kendall in a role in this.
Oh, yes, I actually did mean to mention her earlier. Just after I mentioned Tony Mazzanti, I meant to get onto Susie Kendall. Yes, Susie Kendall was perfectly fine. I actually really like the scene where she's in a state of crisis, where she's actually on the killer's target list.
Yeah.
You don't actually find a huge amount of British stars in giallos, do you? There's not a huge amount of them.
No. I think she's well known for being the girl in peril.
Yeah.
She's done films like Assault, Torso, Spasmo. Yeah. I don't think she's got a lot to do in this film up until the end. I think the ending, where she does play that girl in peril, she does very well. But Dario sort of don't give her a lot to do in the first 2/3 of the film.
No, you're right. She doesn't really she really adds nothing to the plot. She has nothing to
she's there,
to the
I think, for eye candy,
yeah.
If I'm honest.
Yeah, well, yeah, she is. I mean, she was a big kind of sex icon, if you will, certainly of the 60s. Susie Kendall and that. But, like you said, her character isn't really kind of detriment to the plot and stuff. I love that whole, her in crisis towards the end. Correct me if I'm wrong, was it her or was it Melissa George in Frightmare?
Frightmare was
74.
Susan George.
Oh, sorry.
No. Was she in Frightmare?
No, I think it was Susan George, actually. Yeah, I think it was Susan George.
I think you might be talking about My Screaming Marianne.
No, there was a British slasher movie released in 74.
I know what you're on about. You're on about Fright from 1971, Susan George.
Oh, did I say Frightmare?
Yeah.
Sorry, I meant Fright, yeah.
There's a couple of Frightmares. There's one from 74, Pete Walker, and there's another one that was done in the 80s, which is just your run-of-the-mill slasher. Yeah. But the one you're on about is Fright.
Fright, yeah, that's it. It actually got a Blu-ray release, I believe, just last year as well.
Yeah, I bought it as well.
Yeah.
There's another one, not to go too much off topic, but there's another one called And Soon the Darkness. That's another good one.
Yes, hang on, and soon...
And See No Evil as well from 1971.
Yeah, with Mia Farrow.
Yeah, that's a great film.
Yeah, I've seen that. Again, that's pretty underrated. Doesn't really get talked about much.
No, it doesn't.
See No Evil. And I tell you what, right, again, completely getting off topic here. Film from, I believe, 1965. It's a really good black and white psychological thriller, and it's called Bunny Lake is Missing.
Right, I've heard of it. I haven't seen that one.
That's again quite Hitchcockian in its tone. It's a psychological thriller starring Keir Dullea, who went on to star in Black Christmas and 2001: Space Odyssey, of course.
Right, I'll have to put that back on my radar then, because
Bunny Lake is Missing's a good site. Again, doesn't really get talked about much, but it's a good thriller from the 60s.
I like a nice thriller.
So I think we'd agree that Bear the Crystal Plumage. It's a solid giallo. Certainly did a great job of making Argento a name to be reckoned with.
I think it's an outstanding first film, isn't it?
Yeah. In
every way, really, every way. It's well written. It's superbly directed.
Yeah.
And let's not forget that he didn't know what he was doing.
No.
The Rushes come back of the film, and they wanted to pull him. The top bigwigs wanted to pull Dario off the film, and his dad, who was producing the film as well, went out on a limb for him and said, "Look, he totally went out on a limb." So it could have all ended before it started for him.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I think the whole film was just shot in 6 weeks, and I think I read actually that 5 days to write the script. The whole thing was actually written, or was it 3 days? It was either 3 or 5 days. The script was written very, very quickly.
And when they first screened the film, Dario was that scared that he didn't show up. He was that scared he didn't show up. And then the guy, I forget the name of the guy, but the guy who's actually, you know, the big wig, he sort of just slagged Dario off to hell, saying this is not going to make anything. And then he proved everyone wrong, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
But another thing I wanted to get into was a year or two after this, he went on, obviously, to complete the Animal trilogy. Did you know that he was set up to make a UK Hammer film of Dracula?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I actually read
Can
that
you
quite
imagine
some time
what
back.
that film would
Yeah,
have been?
God knows. It's weird, really, because didn't he also do You Like Hitchcock, which was a TV movie?
And that film is really underrated.
Yeah.
2005, I believe.
Mm.
So yeah, the Hammer Dracula, that would have been something, surely. I know he did do Dracula later on in his career, which is absolute rubbish. But can you imagine that with the UK budget, you know, big budget behind it?
Yeah.
I think we got robbed. There.
Yeah, it would have been certainly intriguing to see. Now, I haven't actually met Argento myself. Have you met him?
No, to be honest with you, I've never done the convention scene.
Okay, because he was
something I would do.
It was supposed to be at HorrorCon. I think it was 3 years ago, and he had to pull out. Lamberto Bava was there, of course. You know, Blade in the Dark, Macabre, and Demons. He was there, but Argento had to pull out because of surgery. But he was there the following year, but I wasn't able to go. But I have got an autograph from him. My mate actually got me an autograph.
I think, was that up in Sheffield?
That was, yeah, HorrorCon at Sheffield, yeah.
Yeah, I did see a YouTuber actually meet him. He put it up on YouTube where he met him and that.
Yeah. He's quite, he's quite an odd-looking guy, isn't he, Argento?
Yeah.
He's got he almost looks like, I don't want to sound harsh, he almost looks like kind of Frankenstein's monster-esque, doesn't he? He's got a very distinct, you can't confuse Argento with anyone else, can you?
No.
But
let's thinking of it, look at the two girls he produced, Aja and Fiore.
Yeah.
Aja for me is just stunning. even now, you know, I know she has gone through a tattoo phase and she smokes like hell, but to me, I still find her attractive.
Yeah, yeah. She was in Land of the Dead, wasn't she?
That's right. Yeah, I think she does a pretty good job in that.
Yeah. And obviously, he's directed her on a few occasions.
But she's just gone through that old with the Me Too, and that young boy come forward and claimed that she slept with him when he was underage and all that. So you don't really hear a lot of her now.
I don't know. Why couldn't I meet women like that when I was young?
Exactly. I said I would have. You know, I wouldn't want paying for it.
I know.
I think she paid him over $1 million.
Oh my God! I'd be paying. Well, no, not $1 million.
I'd be paying her $1 million if I had it.
Not with the wage I'm on, but yeah. So I think we'll wrap things up for now.
I've got one more thing.
Okay.
One last thing. Obviously now Dario's got himself involved in a project that's going to start up very soon called Dark Glasses or Black Glasses.
Yeah.
I wondered what your thoughts are on that, just quickly.
What, Argento's return to the Giallo?
Yeah.
I'm intrigued. I'd love to see Argento going back to his roots, which he did do with Giallo, with Adrian Brody, which I'll admit, I've only seen once, I didn't like it. But I've only seen it once.
That film's a comedy, mind. If you look at it as a comedy, then you might get something out of it.
But no, I'm intrigued. I want to see, because there are still Giallos here and there. There's films that still come out to this day that are clearly influenced by Giallo, and you've had some films that are very much kind of tributes to Giallo. You've had Francesca, which is an Argentinian Giallo. The director also directed Sono Profondo and stuff, but Giallo is pretty much kind of a thing of the past, and I'd like to see a really good, solid Giallo churned out.
I'm not a big fan of these ones that try to recreate it, like Amir.
Oh, yes, I've seen that. Yeah.
I'm just not a big fan of them.
It tries to be... The problem is with films like that, I think sometimes they're just kind of artsy to the point of being pretentious.
Yeah. And then you've got the other, comedy Giallo of The Editor, which I've seen bits of, I haven't seen it.
I'll admit, I enjoyed that. I'm not ashamed. I enjoyed it. It is kind of a spoof. It is kind of basically like a parody of all it. It basically just plays out all them little conventions that we know, and it's kind of winking at the audience as it does so. And I'll admit, I did enjoy it.
That's something I need to see, in full, I think.
Yeah, I don't treat it as a serious, because I tell you what it does, right? And I won't go into spoilers, but there's a certain aspect of the film, quite late on in the film, that really does take the mick and mock something that is very often seen in giallos. And you'd be watching it and you're thinking, yeah, it does make a point here. The whole kind of, like, the nonsensical things we get in giallos sometimes.
Yeah,
and this film addresses that. But
sort of like a parody, you mean?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Now, admittedly, I've only seen it once. I don't know if I'd like it as much second time round. But yeah. So no, as for Argento returning, I say bring it on at the end of the day. He's established his name. Argento doesn't have to make great films anymore. He's got some great films to his name. But if he could pull another one off, I'd love it.
Well, I think as long as it's entertaining, I think with every Argento film, even including Dracula, there's at least one good scene.
Yeah.
To where you can say, oh my God, that's, and Sleepless is perfect.
Sleepless needs to be seen by more people, I think.
That whole killing on the train is just, where you've got the rain.
Yeah.
I think he's back to his best.
Yeah.
Even if it's only for 20 minutes of that film.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyone listening to this now that's not seen Sleepless, go out and get it.
Yeah, Sleepless is I think probably the best, in my opinion. It's the best of his later films.
By a mile.
Mile. So that's pretty much it for today then. Bird with a Crystal Plumage, solid giallo, good directorial debut. Clearly, helped shape and mould the giallo as we know it. So thanks a lot to everyone that listened. Thanks for being here, Darren.
Yes, I enjoyed it. Would happily do all this again.
And we'll be back again soon to haunt you and torment you. Take care.
Take care, everyone.